It's over. Eminence in Shadow is over. Episode 20 marks the conclusion of Season 1. And with this final episode that aired today, with just the amazing nature of what this episode really leaves us off on, and a lot of questions too, we do not have a Season 2 announcement. Now, there is some hope. There is some hope to talk about, and so let's get into that first before I really dive into just the true majestic nature of just how amazing this episode of Eminence in Shadow is. So, a few days ago, there was some leaks through some trustworthy sources that there is a Season 2 of Eminence in Shadow coming. And honestly, I'm not surprised at all for there to be a Season 2. The series seems to be very popular. It's definitely made a lot of waves. I mean, judging by just the amount of people that pirated the series last year, I definitely think speaks for just how many people are interested in the show. So when we take that all into consideration, Season 2 just seems possible at this point. Just the question is, when? Now, here's some good news. There was some official information that came out today after the episode aired. Apparently around a week from now, or February 22nd, I forget the exact date, but it's this month, like a week or so from now, there is going to be a major announcement for Eminence in Shadow. If I had to take an educated guess, that is probably a Season 2 announcement. That is just my assumption. I don't know why they would wait like a week or two to announce it, but it seems like we're probably going to be getting a Season 2 announcement relatively soon. So there is some sigh of relief. Like, we're probably going to get a continuation in some shape or form. Now, anyways, with that out of the way, let's also talk about why that is probably going to happen. Actually, at the end of this episode, besides this, oh man, this moment is amazing. Like, holy crap, I'll talk about this in a second. At the end of the episode, after what happens and all that to Rose, and how her name gets changed to, like, 666, the mark of the beast, basically, we actually see a moment in the credit sequence where her name is literally changed to 666. Like, you actually see her legitimate name changed in the credit sequence. I was like, oh, that's a nice attention to detail. That is a legitimate nice attention to detail. Basically, like, it's a multi-layered meta type thing where it's like, she literally lost her name even in the credits of the anime. That she is now just known as that name instead of being called Rose. I think that is legitimately a really cool thing that was added to this episode. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it was really cool. It came off across really amazing by just seeing that in the credits at the end of this episode. But, okay, so let's just say that I really love the conclusion of this episode. And why I think that is, it's a perfect representation of what Eminence in Shadow is. It represents Sid, his 8th grade syndrome nature, his edgy nature, and just how amazing he is as a character. Seeing this man just playing a piano and all that, he's just sitting there playing his tunes, and he's just sitting there in this very, like, dark corridor, basically, right here. It's a really nice and fitting way to conclude Season 1. I just think, like, if there's any way that I think an episode could end for Eminence in Shadow, this is definitely the perfect way to end an episode, because it's like, it fits perfectly with just Sid's entire character. Now, there is something that does need to be mentioned about this. I think that one of my favorite moments of the entire episode is where Sid right here basically snaps. Like, he legitimately, does his ASMR type voice with a scream. He puts this giant magic, like, dome around the entire city. And obviously, from just this very moment, I think everybody, including myself, were like, oh crap, is he about to say, I am atomic? Like, just wipe out the entire city. That is legitimately what this entire scene looks like. You just see the entire city glowing in that purplish hue. You're like, oh no, like, this is about to be really bad. But then, as all this is going down and all that, basically, he just leaves the scene, and he's like, just kidding, and he just leaves. And then you have these characters basically become very mentally broken thanks to that. It's just, a very fascinating scene. Like, legitimately, Sid had quite the, y'all give me light moment. Like, am I the only one that felt that? Like, legit. Like, when I was looking at this moment and listening to the voice actor of Sid, and where he just started, like, laughing maniacally and all that to this very moment, I was like, this really does remind me of, like, the final episode of Death Note. Like, we're just, Light, he's just sitting there laughing. He is laughing maniacally. And I'm like, yo, that's kind of eerie. That's kind of creepy. Like, that man going through a really creepy villainous phase just in this moment. And it's off-putting. I gotta say, compliments and shout-outs to the voice actor of Sid. Like, really has done a fantastic job with the character. If there is one major highlight And I have to really pick out from this entire show, if I'm just talking about the anime, I would say the voice actor has really done a great job. Like, honestly, hella underrated. Absolutely has delivered almost every single line within this episode and the entire show. I think that Sid's voice actor is easily the best voice actor I've heard in a very long time. He really does have a lot of, like, I guess, charisma in his voice. He carries these scenes, and I think that it's definitely because of that why I have come to love the show so much and why I love Sid as a character so much as well. And I am going to be diving into the light novels. I do want to talk about that for a second. I'm going to be diving into the light novels because obviously I do own the first 4 light novels. I did a manga haul video a while back, a few months back, and I did pick up the first 4 volumes. I haven't read them yet, but from what I'm aware of, apparently like season 1 here has covered only volume 1 and 2. Could be wrong with that, but I know it's covered at least 1 volume. I do plan to read the volumes because I do like this series, but it's gonna be a little bit sad not hearing, let's say, Sid's voice actor, especially after just how accustomed I've gotten to it, thanks to just, you know, these episodes of Eminence in Shadow. So, let's talk about actually what this episode sets up. So, Sid obviously demonstrates his overwhelming might, and I think that this is nothing that's really too shocking. We knew that Sid was powerful, like, obvious. I mean, man literally is a walking freaking nuke. He can literally nuke an entire city. He's powerful. He is strong. So it's not really shocking that he absolutely decimated basically 2 of our strongest characters we've at least seen so far within the story of Eminence and Shadow. That is not obviously Shadow Garden. So when we see these characters just get absolutely demolished, it's really not that much of a shock, but just to see how one-sided it was, now that is a little bit of a shock. They didn't press Sid whatsoever. Sid was never pressed. Like, there was a brief moment where you thought that maybe Sid was getting pressed, where, like, his crowbars got absolutely snapped in half and all that. And you're like, whoa, is this fight actually changing around? And you'd think that with the artifact weapon that was, like, being used against him and all that, like, within this episode, when she, is just, you know, having this flame effect, this red magic come out from the, you know, artifact and slashing at Sid, like it might be a game changer and really put, you know, Sid in a corner. But even despite all of these things, it literally did nothing to this man. This man legitimately tanked everything. He fought a 2v1 situation. We had this very beautiful moment. Oh, I love this animation sequence so freaking much. And with the actual chin, you know, like kick, like where he like knees her in the chin. This is absolutely an incredible scene because he just shows his brutality with fighting as well. And that is another aspect of Sid I really like as a character, is that he will do these underhanded tactics to be able to take out an opponent. And the way he just straight up calls her an amateur in this moment, I love that. It's actually great because he basically says that I'm not just a simple sword fighter. If you really think that I'm just going to be fighting with my sword and that's the only thing I want to do, you're sadly mistaken. I'm not going to be honorable. You know, I will knee you if I need to. And I love this. I absolutely love this entire scene because it really just says a lot in this brief little moment of Sid's character, and also showing as well how she underestimated Sid, thinking he might be a little bit more honorable and not do something like this. But he saw through it. He kneed her in the chin, and it's like, holy crap. It just, the entire sequence is great. This is easily one of my favorite sequences of the episode. But, anyways, yeah, this moment also, the way he, like, stomps down on him, and you just see him, like, you know, pull out his sword. Obviously, what this scene was implying is that he was probably gonna kill them, and that would have definitely been, like, something I could see happening. Like, if this was a little bit of a darker anime, like, if this would have, hypothetically, let's say, been Overlord. Overlord's a really good example, because there's always a lot of comparisons I see with Overlord and, you know, Eminence and Shadow. Because the characters, in their own way, even though they're different, there is some similarities between Ainz and Sid. They go different directions, obviously, but there is some similarities. And so when you think about, like, this moment, if this would have been any other series, like, if this would have been Overlord, like, if this would have hypothetically been Ainz, those 2 characters on the ground, they would straight up be dead. They would not survive this fight. They would have been gone right then and there. And in all honesty, in reality, if this also would have been Overlord, Ainz would have wiped out the entire city. That would have been the end of the discussion there. He wouldn't have just stopped here. When Sid was doing his little games and putting on this little show of magic, the entire city would have been gone, regardless, because that's what he would do. So, when I really think about that, it's just like, there is a line here and a core difference. I think Sid obviously isn't a morally good character. I don't think he's morally evil as well. I just think he is a gray character, a very gray character. I do like his character a lot, and I do like how he continues to act like, he just goes down this path of being the Eminence in Shadow, wants to be like this shadow in the background. It's great. I love his character. I love also how he takes note. He's like, man, maybe I'm being a little bit too public and flashy, and it's just like, yeah, you're being a little bit too flashy. I mean, but it's funny he says this after he literally nuked a huge portion of this other city in a previous episode, so it's just like, really? Now you're saying that? That's kind of funny. Now, anyways, one thing I do want to point out as well is this Sherry scene. So, from what I'm hearing from light novel readers, is that this is a anime original scene. Correct me if I'm wrong, because, once again, not a light novel reader. But I've been told that this is an anime original scene, and if so, I'm glad this was added in. I think that this was definitely a warranted scene, because obviously, Sherry as a character is definitely being built up as a opposing entity to Shadow, because Sherry obviously shows a lot of commitment, she's very intelligent, she is not someone you can necessarily sweep under the rug and act like she's going to be weak. If she puts her time and effort to it, she's going to become a really strong opposing force, so to speak, to Shadow Garden and Sid. And I think showing this little update, showing just how mad she is, how nuts basically she is, like having all these different posters of Sid or Shadow Garden, really speaks a lot about just how far down the rabbit hole she has gone to be able to figure out and bring him down. And I think that this is a great scene. This really shows that eventually she will pose a threat. And I think that Sid as a character, with how he is and how he likes effort and all that, probably would really like her even more because of this little element of her, personality. So, yeah, it's one thing is very clear, especially with this scene, is that Sid is making a lot of enemies. It's very clear. I mean, like, it's not just Sherry, obviously. We have, like, the whole stuff with a bunch of our female cast characters. There's obviously a lot that falls into Sid's harem and joins, Shadow Garden, but it's very clear that he's making a lot of enemies, a lot of characters that do not like him. And it's not just, let's say, the higher-up politics. You have legitimately a lot of these characters that are being mentally affected by him, and it's clear they're going to want to kill him. It's really clear. He is building a huge faction against him as this series progresses, and that is also very exciting, because it's not just going to be, let's say, the Cult of Diablos that is going to be, coming after Shadow Garden. It's going to be these other factions that are probably going to team up to bring him down, and I do think that, Sid isn't this overwhelming might and force within his story, and I do want to talk about that, and it could be even its own video. I think Sid is incredibly powerful. Like, I legitimately think that Sid, at least from what we have witnessed from the story so far, he's probably the strongest entity in the world. I mean, I think that really does speak for itself. But we do have to factor in, from the brief little stuff we got from, let's say, the demon, Diablos and all that, what we saw, and wasn't really the full power of the individual from the previous arc, and all that, there is a possibility that Sid could have some challenge later on with maybe the in-game entities. I could definitely see that. But overall, I don't think that right now Sid's going to have much of a challenge. But anything can happen. I really do think anything can happen, and I do wonder if there will ever be a lingering threat overall at the end of the day for the story. I guess right now Sherry is that lingering threat. I think if there is anyone that probably could oppose him and give him any form of trouble in the future, it would be Sherry. Because she's a researcher, she would research into magic, she'd put all of her effort into that, and try to figure out a way to really bring him down. Because if she could disable his magic, and his strength with his slime and all that, that would be very devastating to him. Yeah, we've seen him fight without magic, but if he legitimately has, like, no magic whatsoever, and it's completely canceled, and then he, like, can't use any of his abilities, and let's say he's debuffed to hell, he probably would lose, and I can definitely see that. I mean, we have seen him be affected by artifacts and other things in the past, so he is not this all-immune immortal being. He definitely can die. And with how he plays around in some cases, I think if someone figured out his identity, that, he was hiding as Sid, he would probably die. I 100% could see that. Because I could see Sid committing to the act of not wanting to break character, and he would die because of it. I could 100% see that. So, food for thought, but I guess I'll leave it at that. Eminence in the Shadow, it's been a journey, man. I've loved this entire journey. I have loved this series from start to finish. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't necessarily like Eminence and they don't see the hype, and that's understandable. As I've said in the past, comedy is subjective. It is not a series meant for everyone because, once again, the series does have a serious dark tone to it. There is some dark elements to this, I just talked about it, but there is a lot of comedy within this anime, and because of that comedy, it could definitely be off-putting because Sid as a character is more of a joke, or edgy, or like an edgelord. He's just edgy, and when you think about it like that, I can see why people wouldn't like Eminence in Shadow. But as for me, I enjoy it. It's right up my alley. I enjoy that. It's a certain level and limit of edge that I'm into, and I think that because of how it knows what it is, it plays with these cliches and all of that, I'm a big fan. I'm gonna miss this series. I really do hope that we get a Season 2 announcement. Obviously, I assume it's gonna be, but I do hope it is one because anything can happen and be announced, and I do hope as well that it won't be that long of a wait, but at the same time, I'm willing to wait if it's going to be a good season. Like, I don't want to rush it out the door and have, let's just say, infinite delays back to back with all these other anime that's been happening, so I'm willing to wait, but I guess this will be my final video for Eminence in the Shadow for a good long while. Hopefully there is a new anime very soon that will really get my interest and I can tickle what hole is left in my heart from Eminence in Shadow leaving us. But I guess I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you so much for watching. For all of you that have watched my Eminence in Shadow videos, I greatly appreciate it. I really do. As always, it really makes me happy to see you guys and engaging in the comments, leaving likes, etc. I always greatly appreciate that. And so, be safe, everyone. Stay healthy, and I'll keep you all up to date when any more information comes out for a potential Season 2. Chibi out.